Hello, 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 beautiful people, and welcome back for another opportunity to join me for Career Gems Live with Leah Murphy. So, I am closing out our series today. We've been talking about, do you hate networking, or are you just uncomfortable talking about yourself or your accomplishments? And it's been an interesting journey. I've learned a lot throughout the experience, and I certainly feel like I've shared a lot. So, I think that this type of conversation needs to be had because building relationships is something that is going to constantly be required of us as we advance in our careers. But also, this idea that technology is going to replace relationships or it's going to put a significant change on the way we build relationships is something that I'm really tuned into and sensitive to. When we think about AI and we think about language learning models and all that comes along with it and how they're going to be integrated into our life in different stages, I think the ability to still build human connection with individuals is something that is going to differentiate you in the future. So really, really, really excited to be a part of this series, to be closing it out and then talking about something brand new. So if you're with me live and you've taken the time to join me live, I sincerely appreciate you. Drop your city in the chat so I know who's with me. I always try to make sure I'm reading the comments as we're going through the content, because knowing who's here energetically with me also gives me life, gives me a little bit more energy to just step it up for you all. And I want to make sure that we also get our housekeeping out of the way. Two things. First thing is join our newsletter. It is just getting better and better with your feedback and the experiences from the members of the community. My team and I curate a monthly newsletter that goes directly to your inbox. It requires almost no effort from you, but it does give you career gems, amazing resources, and applicable tools that you can then go apply to your career. But it's only available if you're a member of that exclusive newsletter community. So head over to gemsforthejourney.org and join our newsletter community. And the second one is, before we jump into the topic, you can also find this content on YouTube Live. So on YouTube Live, we're cataloging all of these live streams on our YouTube channel. We are Career Gems for the Journey on YouTube. So if you've missed any or you haven't been a part of everyone for this series and you're like, oh, I need to catch up, head over to our YouTube channel and you can get right up to date and jump right in. So today I wanted to talk a little bit more about, do you hate networking, or are you just uncomfortable talking about your accomplishments? But I want to make sure that I talk about it from a pink elephant in the room perspective. This is going to be, it's going to feel a little uncomfortable because it's something that we don't really talk about. I wanted to avoid just doing, here are all the strategies, here are some tips that you can use, here's a way that you can approach it to make it palatable to you, but also to make it actionable. So what it leaves out when we're just giving out tips or we're just giving out expertise or we're just causing a discussion or encouraging a discussion that feels like if you just make these one or two hacks, you'll be great. We leave out this idea that some of us are intentionally avoiding networking because we have had bad experiences either with networking or specifically with coworkers. So I want to be honest about that. There's been a lot of feedback where folks have said, I believe what you're saying and I try to apply this here, or I try to apply that there, and I've had bad experiences, so I'm just gun shy. I just don't feel comfortable approaching people in public spaces because I've gotten such difficult experiences in my actual workplace. And I hear that. That's real. So I want to make sure that we kind of address that. Because many of us have had bad experiences with coworkers, and brilliant coach that I've also partnered with and collaborated with, Melva Holt, is actually doing a whole group specifically focused on navigating corporate hurt and corporate experiences. So if you're navigating something that is challenging in your day-to-day workplace, there are resources that are absolutely available. And I think what Melva does in her work as a practitioner, a coach, an HR professional, a corporate executive, all of that makes her uniquely qualified to be able to navigate some of that with you and work through it. But what it has shown me and what I've learned in hearing people's experiences in navigating corporate hurt or corporate America challenges or adversity and not having good experiences directly with their coworkers, and sometimes that applies to academia and nonprofit leadership too, right? Where there are people, there will be good experiences and there will be bad experiences. So then some folks have just had a bad experience with their coworker and it caused them to shut down. I want to tell you a quick story. I have a client, phenomenal client, super capable, very talented, had gotten promoted multiple times throughout her career, in a very, in an 8-year period, had been promoted 3 or 4 times. And that fourth promotion put her in a position where she is reporting to a leader that she hadn't worked with directly, had only worked with them indirectly, but that leader clearly had a difference of opinion on her talent, her capability. This leader made it very clear that they did not think that my client deserved all of the attention or acknowledgement that she was getting, and kind of went out of their way to make sure that they did not position her well or did the best to humble my client. And this idea of having a real experience with a direct manager who is not supportive of you, and not only are they not supportive of you, it's this idea of putting her in a position where she would be humbled. And that's kind of this idea that she was performing well and had gotten promoted, and the rest of the organization thought one thing of her, but this manager wanted to make sure that she was clear that that stopped at this stage of the process. So what that resulted in is just this frictional relationship between her and between my client and this manager. And that went on for a period of time. And I could see that that frictional relationship from someone who was going out of their way to not give her the acknowledgement or the validation that she deserved, or not allow her to really show up in the best way possible, because she felt like she had to make all these adjustments to the way that she communicated, or to her execution, or whatever it was, in order to try to get to a place where she could have a good relationship with this manager, because she had done so many great things leading up to this. It was disorienting. I say all this to say the fear that then that put into the relationship and into her own perspective of herself then caused her to shrink. It caused her to withdraw. It caused her to stop being as, willing to share, willing to collaborate, willing to go above and beyond, willing to make sure that she supported other people's work. It caused her to withdraw. And what I noticed in her as a client is that rather than risk the feeling of rejection, or rather than risk being in a position where her manager was going to call her out, or there was going to be a gotcha moment, she focused more on avoidance and remaining neutral. And I've heard that in a lot of people's situations. So I wonder if anybody who's with me live has experienced a change in their perspective or the way they show up to the workplace. And that changes as a result of having a frictional relationship with a manager or a coworker. So I'm bringing this full circle now because it goes back to networking. This idea that someone who is supposed to be collaborating with you or working with you would go out of their way to humble you. And I'm doing air quotes for humble, because humbling someone and having humility is the same root word. So humility is something that is self-awareness, right? And making sure that we're aligned to the version of ourselves that shows up, and that we're conscious of what's happening and that we behave accordingly. But trying to humble someone else is actually more like trying to bring them down a peg. If you think that they think too much of themselves, then you're going to go out of your way. Potentially, your insecurities may risk you trying to work to humble them so that they think of themselves more in a way of the way you think of them as a manager. It's a very uncomfortable power dynamic, but it can happen between peers. It can happen between managers and direct reports. So rather than risk being rejected or being gotcha'd or being, maybe embarrassed or called out in a meeting unnecessarily because of this manager's style, my client withdrew. And what we recognize there is that this manager relationship that she was having was not allowing her to grow and flourish the way she needed to. She had actually regressed. And we could see there was a direct line of demarcation, a clear link to the way this manager was behaving and treating her, to the way that she was showing up. But then that trickled into her ability to build connections with other people, her brightness and an ability to connect with people at networking events or even with her peers, her ability to have one-liners that were inspirational to other people or really get other folks excited, build momentum and kind of get her team going. So this one relationship has now had a negative impact on the way that she shows up in a number of other interactions. So I wanted to share that story because it may not be that networking is something that you hate. It may be that past experiences have caused you to see networking as too risky, as not worthwhile. And it's sometimes easier to avoid or focus on avoidance of these skills, these connections with other people, because we don't want to manage the risk of being hurt or disappointed or humbled or shamed. And that is a real thing. So, because I wanted to kind of acknowledge that and make sure that folks feel like we're in a position where it's not just tips and tricks, it's not just strategies for networking, it's not just about adding value, it's also kind of about where we are in our own headspace and whether or not we can show up as the version of ourselves that allows others in. And oftentimes, when we've had negative relationships or negative experiences directly with a manager, directly with a peer or a coworker, we're not in the right headspace to be able to build a broader network because we're different in some ways. So I want to make sure that we think about it's not always your hacks, tricks, or strategies in order to navigate networking. Sometimes we have to undo some of the damage or the misconceptions that we have about networking, building relationships, and that damage has been done from something that was something out of our control. So I want to make sure that we remind ourselves that it is absolutely necessary when we're in corporate environments to navigate what feels safe for us. When we're in work environments, does this feel safe? Is this environment that's going to be good for me? If the environment is not going to be safe, then I'm not going to be willing to open myself up and build new relationships or to expose myself to risk. But if it does feel safe, then there's boundless opportunities. So if anyone's listening who is a leader, managing people, direct reports, really in a matrix organization, I want to encourage you, if you see a lack of collaboration between your team members, if you see a lack of genuine connection between them, step back and ask, have I created a safe space environment where these individuals have the ability to take the risk of really opening themselves up to their peers, to their coworkers, to their teammates? Because if you haven't created that safe space, then you may have lots of people in your organization that have experienced some kind of difficulty, some kind of relationship friction with a peer or with a manager, and now they have just updated their personality or updated the way they show up to that workplace based on that old information. Individuals can cultivate new personalities and new ways of being and behaving based on whether or not they feel safe in the workplace they're navigating. So here are our takeaways. Number one, if you lead people, you lead a matrix team, you have any decision rights, make sure you're doing the work to create an environment that is a safe space that's going to cultivate innovation, collaboration, and work together. That's number one. And you create that safe space by eliminating any mistreatment of one person or another. Certainly, you as the manager should go out of your way to avoid mistreating or differentiating or behaving dramatically differently between your employees or your team members, because other people are going to see that and observe it, and they're going to act accordingly. Number two, if you have experienced a challenging relationship with a coworker, it takes a long time to adjust your personality to dealing with that individual. And oftentimes we can apply that same difficult personality adjustment to other relationships. And that's where we start to have a lack of networking, a lack of connection, because you've applied this one way of being and behaving based on that person's personality and the difficulty that you have with others who have no knowledge, right? That you're experiencing something that is difficult with your coworker. So coming into these experiences as I am open to navigating this new relationship with this individual and to figure out if this is a safe place, if we can grow together, if we can work together, if we can collaborate, and then making those decisions based on individual experiences, not a whole peanut butter spread where this is it and I have no desire, or capacity to meet or connect with new people because of fear. I understand that that might be the risk or that might be the natural desire. But in order to reframe your thinking, in order to disrupt that pattern, we have to create new connections with people and give new opportunities to be able to build those connections. So, number two is think about each interaction as an individual experience, and that'll give you the freedom to be able to find connections that will work for you and to discard the ones that don't. And number three, as adults, sometimes we feel a tremendous pressure to already know everything, to already have done everything, to already have all the networks, to already be an expert, to already fill in the blank, right? In a society where corporations and institutions value this, you already know everything, you're already very capable. And that is the expectation. Oftentimes, the fear of opening ourselves up as someone who may not know, someone who is still a novice, someone who is still learning and growing in an area feels completely terrifying. And I'm here to tell you that what I see more than anything in positive networking interactions and relationship is a sincere desire for curiosity. Exercising the muscle of curiosity so that you can ask thoughtful, genuine questions and make a sincere connection with someone is such an underrated skill. So, for my number three, as you're thinking about building networking connections, knowing that there's all of this expert discussions and expert expectation and expert halo glow that is social media is promoting, and certainly I have seen it myself, and I feel responsible sometimes to make sure that I show up as an expert because this is the work that I do. But in my networking, in my building connections, I try to lead with curiosity so that I can really exercise this muscle and get better at being curious and asking great questions and being patient to have a relationship, a conversation evolve with someone over time. But that only happens with sincere curiosity. And it means that we're not only focused on our personal individual needs. So that's number three. Exercise the muscle of curiosity because then your curiosity will lead you into places and conversations that will change your perspective, that will evolve your thinking, that will build upon something that you already know, but it comes from a place of growth. So if we can focus on one, making sure from a leadership level, we're creating environments where people are safe so they can collaborate, they can navigate the workplace and build and work with their teammates, you will absolutely see collaboration and networking and innovation happen. Number two, if we can make sure that we're thinking like really actively about each interaction as an individual experience. We can't apply the way that we've experienced one person to every networking environment or interaction. It's just not possible. It's not sustainable. And it's almost, not fair to you as the individual and certainly not fair to the person who you are approaching and burdening right in your mind with the baggage of a previous interaction. And then the last one is, as we are adults and we are navigating these new environments, leading with curiosity, exercising the muscle of being curious about what someone does, who they are, what they're passionate about, where their values lie, where you guys overlap and interact can be a tremendously powerful way to approach networking and building new relationships that feels very honest. It feels very authentic to you. And it also gives you an opportunity to kind of put down your guard and operate in curiosity, which is a skill I think is so underrated. And many, many, many more of us can continue to grow in this area. So we're closing out our do you hate networking or are you just uncomfortable talking about yourself and accomplishments? And we can only do this work because it matters to you. That's the only reason why we bring this to you. So if there's something specific that you want to talk about in this arena or questions that you have around networking or do's and don'ts or networking problems that just blew up and didn't work out for you, I would love to hear them. I would love for you to DM me because I want to make sure that this content feels absolutely relevant for you because that's what we're here for. Next week, when you come back at Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are going to be talking about the changes in skill building in the job market. What skills and competencies are getting people new opportunities or getting people hired. The job market is completely different than what it was in 2022, for example. And we want to make sure that we're building the right skills and we're thinking about the job market in a way that is honest and that is real. So we're going to do a 4-part series to talk about the skills that are going to be necessary for you to be successful, for you to build in this current job market. And it's not just going to be a talk about AI, because there's so much more than that. So I'm excited for you to join me for that, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I look forward to seeing you there. If anything happens in between now and then, I pray that you make your journey work for you, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side.